See that blinking red light? That means it started. That'll be edited out, of course. Okay, so we make sure we're both kind of equidistant or whatever. So, here we go. Hello and welcome back to the Chelmsford News Show. I'm Tom Christiano. Well, I'm very pleased that I have another guest with me today who we did a show about a month or two ago, an environmental engineer named Peter Spawn. So this is part 2 of our interview. We're going to be talking about many more conservation issues in town. Peter is the vice chairperson of the Chelmsford Conservation Commission. He's also chairman of the Chelmsford Tree Committee, and he's on many other committees as well, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. So, Peter, how are things going?
Yeah, no complaints, Tom. I want to thank you for this chance to share a little bit more information about what the town is doing on environmental areas, and I wanted to focus a little bit more on the tree program, a little bit about the Energy Committee, and then talk mostly about the Conservation Commission and conservation land and why all that is important to us.
Yes.
Yeah, so
How many years have you been on the Conservation Commission?
About 4 years now.
4 years? Oh, nice.
Yeah, I finally constructed a garage, long awaited by my wife, and I realized I was in 5 different environmental zones related to wetlands and endangered species and a whole bunch of other things. Yeah, here in Chelmsford.
Here in Chelmsford, okay.
Yeah, and that kind of explains why we see so many wild critters out the kitchen window, but when it was time to build something, there were a whole bunch of town rules that had been established by the community and by the state to try to minimize negative impacts. So I had a refresher course on all of those rules and got to know the Conservation Commission and ended up being asked to join.
Wonderful.
So,
now you're the vice chairman.
I am, yes.
Wonderful.
Yes. So I want to talk a little bit today, Tree Committee, Energy, Concom, as I mentioned. So I did want to also share a little bit, just to recap, we talked about this in the first show, but my interest, my professional interest, and now that I'm working on a number of town things, my interest is identifying sources of environmental pollution that affect humans and wildlife, and work on the solutions.
Yes.
And that's sort of the big difference between a pure environmental advocate and an environmental engineer. We're trained to answer the question, does it matter, whatever it is? I mean, is it going to have an impact, and how do we minimize any impacts of any development or growth or any really changes to the land? And I think it's important to note before we get started, and I think this is the feeling of our commission as well, this is not a growth or no growth kind of scenario, particularly with the Conservation Commission, but even to some extent the work on the Tree Committee. There are town laws established by the community. And our primary job is to be sure projects meet the community values as evidenced in the laws and regulations. It's not so much personal preference, it's defined by the community, and those bylaws can be changed by anyone that wants to work the process.
Do we have any bylaw changes in process now?
There are none that I'm aware of directly related to environmental. The Conservation Commission has a work group that is looking at some potential changes, but haven't really reached any conclusion at this point. We're monitoring what other communities might be doing and what sort of the state of the art is.
Yeah.
But again, the goal is not to restrict development. The goal is smart development.
Yes. But speaking of bylaws and things like that, there's the new Coles Conservation Land. It's Coles? Not Coles.
Coolis.
Coolis. Yeah. I always call it Coles for some reason, because of the store, obviously. So Coolis land, I've been there about a month or two ago, took a number of photos, and the committee is trying to get it under the Conservation Commission, right, rather than the town. And I'm wondering if we're going to have a town warrant article to try to accomplish that again, because it was tried last year and I guess it failed or something, and the town still controls Coolis farmland.
Yeah, the select board has delegated authority to manage that land to the Conservation Commission.
Good.
your question has a fairly complicated answer, but the short version is all of these town properties are governed by something called a conservation restriction, which is a state term
Yeah.
for all communities, and it's basically the legal document that a community prepares that describes what can and cannot be done with the property. So a simple example is it's a legal document that if the community wants says, hey, we can never use this land to build, a government building because we want to save it as conservation.
I see.
So those arrangements, you've been working on the one for Warren Pole for a number of years with our partner, the Land Trust at Warren Pole. And it's been a couple of years, and that property was bought a few years before Coulis. So that same process is going on at Coulis. And
Who's controlling?
and well, it's driven primarily by the Conservation Commission at this point,
But the
working
war-
with town council and other members. But
Yeah.
the argument was, like why don't we wait until we get that CR established before
CR,
the conservation restriction, which is a multi-year process. Which there's some logic to that point of view. Let's
Yes.
nail down exactly what our legal commitments are going to be on this land,
I see,
and then
yes.
figure out the ownership question.
Have we done that on the pole
It-
property
the-
yet?
the C-
Which is
it's-
off of Boston Road.
Right, and that was purchased, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago before I got involved. But that's been in front of the state. The state has given us some comments, and we're responding to those comments. They're not major. But
Oh,
that
they have some suggestions for us?
Yes, yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Good or bad? Or
They're mostly minor word
Oh.
changes.
just where?
Yeah.
Oh, in the document itself.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So
But
yeah,
that's going good. I haven't been hiking there in a long time. How is it going? I wonder if many people are using the what's it called, Warren Pole property.
right.
Are people using it?
Well, yeah, I would say so. It's not as popular as some of the bigger properties, but it's heavily used. One interesting thing about Warren Pole is we believe it's the only big conservation land. There's some smaller ones, but that basically has a sidewalk to the center of Chelmsford. So if you're in downtown Chelmsford, you can walk on a sidewalk
Yes.
to this property.
Yeah.
And so, when we feel that that's a pretty big benefit. And the neighbors, of course, use it frequently too.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
By the way, we're taping this show at Hart Pond at one of the picnic tables here. This is such a beautiful place here in Chelmsford. I think maybe my favorite place in Chelmsford. I usually bike on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail every morning during the biking season, and I always stop here at Hart Pond to look around and to enjoy this beautiful view. So we're lucky to have it here, right? It's part of open space in town, I guess.
Yeah, we're lucky to have it, and I'm sorry that the viewing audience does not see the pond as we see it right now.
Yeah,
So,
the reason we can't because it would put us all in shadow if we had the camera facing the other way.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you.
Should we dive in?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about a couple of the environmental activities that go on the committees that I've been involved in, and describe opportunities for other people to volunteer and get involved. And I wanted to share my story with a little bit more detail. My wife and I have been in town for over 40 years. I was busy working with a family. I never got involved in town activities. I monitored it, I voted. But I had some time 4 years ago and got involved in a number of town committees. And what I'd like to share with everybody is I have been incredibly impressed by a couple of things. One is, this is a good town. Once you start to meet people and work with town staff, this town is very good at making space for new people that come along with some fresh ideas,
Yes.
and very good at helping you if you have an idea that you want to implement. Now, not that we all get exactly what we want. There's all kinds of limits and whatnot, but I've found the volunteer effort very rewarding because of the response by other volunteers, but also people in town government that you usually need to get something done. So I wanted to pass that on as sort of a lobby for other people to consider volunteering, and I want to describe how you do that. And I got a short list here.
Please.
It's not direct. You kind of have to look around. Some things are direct. I mean, there are opportunities advertised here and there, but here's the basic way you figure out how to match up your interest with the town, is what I've learned. You start with the town government, and you take a look at the different town boards, things like Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Historic Commission, the The water districts have boards of directors, although they're a little bit smaller. So you start looking at the town boards, but also the town has 50 advisory committees of volunteers appointed by the select board to do things. And there's a charter for each, and they're all on the town website, along with the current committee members and all the agendas and meeting minutes. And the important thing is any member of the public can come to a meeting and express an opinion or an idea. And that is an open meeting. They call it the open meeting process.
Yeah.
So there's a very, very easy way if you're interested in bikes and pedestrians or trees or sustainability or recycling. There's a variety of environmental focused committees. The second way, so it's town boards and town meeting, it's committees. The third of the four options is a little bit more digging, but the town operates, the town is guided by about 10 different what I call town planning documents, and these are things like the master plan. We did the 7-year update of something called the Open Space and Recreation Plan last year. There's climate-related plans. There's a stormwater plan. There's about 10 of these that are prepared carefully, usually with outside experts guiding us, bringing to us best practices from other communities. And those plans invariably have many, many, many action items for the town to do.
Yeah.
And I have found that our town government, for the most part, I'm on the master plan committee, I've found that our town government, or maybe a committee, but usually town government, is pretty good at implementing, most of the recommendations, but there's a lot of them. And at some point, we run out of bandwidth for town staff or existing volunteers to work on things. A good example is there's a lot of work starting now in town on something called invasives. That was identified in the master plan 4 or 5 years ago. And it's taken a while to get things rolling, and that could use some more help. So if you're interested in environmental things, I'd encourage you to dig out these plans. They're a pretty quick read, even though they're long, and take a look at the action items. And then make some phone calls, send some emails to a committee chair or town officials, and figure out what's going on and figure out how to match up current activity with your interests. And I know that's a lot of digging, but it is that complicated. There's a lot going on.
Right. And they could find those plans on the town's website?
Yes.
Under what
Well,
topic?
I'm not aware that they're in any one place.
I
You
see.
really do have to do a little bit of digging.
Yeah.
But they all have names. If you spend some time on the website and use the
find
Google,
it.
the search feature, you'll find them.
Oh, good.
And then also, in terms of the conservation land, if anyone wants to volunteer, it's simple. Just contact our town full-time employee on conservation, David Coons, at Town Hall. And
He's a town full-time
and
employee.
David is full-time. So
And
I'll
what's his
explain
position?
that.
Do you know?
Yeah, the official title is conservation agent.
Oh.
But he is the, well, let me dive in and talk about the Conservation Commission, then I'll follow up
Yes,
with a
please.
couple comments about the Tree Committee. Why don't we change the order since you
Sounds
asked?
great. Sounds great.
So here, let me try to stay focused here with my notes. So I wanted to talk mostly today about the Conservation Commission. We did touch on this on the earlier show, but I think we kind of were rushed. So here's my thoughts on what's important for us all to think about. Conservation commissions were formed in the 60s in Massachusetts with a mission to help protect natural resources. But that mission was expanded in the 1980s with something called the State Wetland Protection Act.
I see.
And the reason was that the experts realized the state had lost about half of its wetlands. And wetlands are extremely important for a whole bunch of reasons related to human enjoyment and human well-being.
I see.
And we can get into that in a minute. So, and then the town followed that up with a town set of bylaws called the Town Wetland Protection Act. It's Chapter 187 of the town bylaws. It's easy to look up and read. But the idea is that both of these pieces of legislation have a bunch of rules. And they're things like you can't build within 50 feet of a wetland, and you need to take actions to help uh, minimize negative impacts.
I see.
And so the way the thing works is that if you want to disturb the land, as I said, within 100 feet of a wetland or 200 feet of a river or stream, you do need to come to the Conservation Commission. You don't always need a permit, but you often do. And David Coons is the person to call at Town Hall. He's incredibly experienced and very good at guiding people. Projects that are constructed that are within this 100-foot buffer from wetlands or 200 from streams very often require some sort of public hearing in front of the Conservation Commission, and we decide whether to approve the project or not. But usually what happens is that we work with whoever wants to build the project and work with the laws to come up with a project that meets all the laws that are established by our society.
Yes.
It's fairly strict in those rules, and there's some things we can do and some things we can't. But the idea is that our 7-member board, we're all volunteers. David is our agent, he's our full-time person. But the 7 board members appointed by the town, it's our job to ensure that projects meet the town and the state laws related to wetlands.
Yes.
And I think maybe sometimes that point is missed, so I wanted to share that.
Oh.
The goal of the whole thing is to make sure that the project minimizes environmental impacts, and where possible, make an improvement.
Oh.
So a good example is if you've got a parking lot that has stormwater directly draining into a wetland, that's bringing all kinds of pollutants and sediment and things that are bad for the wetland. And the new regs require, if you're going to reconstruct that property, you have to treat the stormwater to eliminate a majority of the pollutants before it enters. And that's really important in Chelmsford, where much of our land is what's called a Zone 2 wellhead protection zone, but it's part of our drinking water aquifer. So if you look at the town map, it's really kind of surprising how much of the town potentially can discharge through groundwater or surface water into drinking water.
Oh.
So the commission is set up, this whole thing is set up to protect natural resources. Well, what are natural resources? It's defined in these laws. You can look it up pretty simply, but the interests that we are commissioned to protect include things like drinking water quality, reducing flood impacts, property damage. And there's endangered species provisions, protecting wildlife habitat. There's a whole list of about a dozen, they call them interests, that are the whole purpose of these regulations
I see.
and permits. So once again, it's not really established by us. I mean, we do have some, I want to say this carefully, we as a community have control over our town regulations, but we also need to follow what's in the State Wetland Protection Act, and they're very similar.
I see.
So,
Yeah.
So I also wanted to mention that we are set up as a very public process, as is the Select Board and the Planning Board and all the town committees, something the state calls the open meeting rule. But I also want to make a point, public is welcome to Conservation Commission meetings at any time. We have an open forum at the beginning for any issues the public wants to bring, and then when we review a project, there's always an opportunity for public input.
Wonderful.
That is a huge volunteer opportunity. There's a lot of members of the public that do come out and have done a little bit of research that is very helpful, and we do consider.
Do you meet once a month, generally?
Twice a month.
Twice a month, good.
Yeah.
And the dates and times are on the town website, I imagine?
They are. It's all of the town committee meetings and all of the board meetings are posted on the town website under website's been redesigned. It's really easy. It's called Agendas and
Agendas,
Minutes. And
yeah.
You can there's a wealth of information in there on what's going on in the town.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk take a little bit of my time on talking about Conservation Commission. I want to talk about how we manage land, and it's sort of interesting. We're here at Lovely Hart Pond. This is not one of the properties managed by the Conservation Commission. But let me describe how this worked, because it took me a while to figure this out. There's about 1,000 acres in town, plus or minus, of what we call conservation land.
I see. 1,000 acres. Wow.
Now, when you talk about open space, that definition is the conservation land plus open space. So it includes like the school grounds and any.
And Hart Pond area?
Yeah, and Hart Pond is part of that. The way it's set up is the Conservation Commission either owns or has been asked to manage about 90% of that 1,000 acres, and it tends to be the big properties. Russell Mill, Cranberry Bog, Warren Pole, Coulis, the Wright Reservation, and a bunch of smaller ones.
Wow.
The Land Trust, which was, I believe, founded in the 60s, is an entirely separate entity. Many communities have both a Conservation Commission and a Land Trust.
Do we have a land trust?
And we have a land trust, very active.
I'm on that, yeah. Chelmsford Conservation Land Trust.
Yeah, and they're very active, and they have about 10 smaller parcels in town, and there's names like Bartlett Woodlot and Bovey Forest, and there's a whole host of others. In fact, quite a few of these properties, good example is Thanksgiving Forest. The Conservation Commission manages the 40 acres of Thanksgiving Forest. The Land Trust has some very ecologically important parts of the Russell Mill Pond under their purview, and we work together to do projects and to manage that land.
Wonderful, wow.
So that's a good description. So I want to make that distinction. I also want to describe and give a shout out and thank our team of volunteers. There's the conservation land, but when I say conservation, I'm really talking about all of this. Sort of the day-to-day management is done by volunteers, and each of these properties have what the Concom refers to as a land steward, but it's just an individual that keeps an eye on the property and alerts the Concom when there's any issue. And those issues could be anywhere from a tree has fallen and needs to be cleared to let's build a new kiosk, let's do a walkway here, whatever. But a lot of that work is done. I want to give a shout out to the unsung heroes. There's about 20 town residents that quietly volunteer and do a lot of this heavy work, working with the land stewards.
Can we name some of them or no? We have about 6 minutes left.
Yeah, let's not get into the list because I don't know everybody, and I'm going to leave some people out. But I do want to just mention that's the most immediate volunteer opportunity, and that group is starting to get involved in invasive species work. And I wanted to say a couple of quick words about invasives.
Yes.
Big hot topic right now. I want to make a really, really important distinction here.
Okay.
It's invasive species is the word that's used, but the real problem is non-native plants, which tend to be invasive.
Yeah.
So things like bittersweet and buckthorn and multiflora rose, they're not native, and they're also invasive.
Yes.
Now there are native plants. A great example is the yellow goldenrod you see all over town later in the summer. Yeah. It's pretty invasive. It's pretty aggressive is really the word used. But it's not an invasive plant, even though you may not want your whole yard taken over by goldenrod.
I see.
So when the town talks about invasives, we're talking about the non-native plants. And the reason is the non-native plants tend to grow faster and overtake our native plants, and that's what's happening. And so there's about 5 or 6, I call them pilot projects because they've only been going on for a couple of years, but there's 5 or 6 projects the town's working on. Probably don't have time to describe them all, but the idea is to start chipping away at this problem.
Yeah.
And it's been done by the Coulis team at Coulis for a couple of years. Last year, the conservation started what I believe is the first ever herbicide application to control invasives. Nobody likes putting poison on conservation land, but that is the best practice with a licensed applicator with a very small dab of a herbicide on the cut stem of certain plants. Other plants you can pull up by hand. The bigger ones need to have a little bit of, just like you might put weed killer on your lawn.
That seems like very time consuming to get each
It
each
is.
plant?
It is.
Oh my God.
It is. So last year, our members of our 20-team volunteer group worked with the Conservation Commission and an expert that the town hired, and cut
To do that?
and cut a lot of invasives
Oh,
at Warrenpole.
the worm pole,
You know,
yeah.
spent a day
Off of
doing
Boston
that.
Road.
Yep. And then an individual went around, the licensed applicator that had expertise with a little dab,
Wow.
and that's pretty much eliminated a lot of the burning bush. There are other invasives like Norway maple and tree of heaven that are kind of consuming and crowding out the natives there that were
Is
treated.
are those trees?
Yeah, those are trees.
Both
I'm
of
sorry.
them,
They
yeah.
were treated and they're a little bit harder to kill. So our land steward there is working on that with our conservation agent.
Wow.
So there's other things going on. There's invasives work besides Coulis and Warren Pole. A lovely project at Thanksgiving Forest where mostly the residents have been removing invasives, and the important part about Thanksgiving Forest is they're replanting
Replanting?
native plants.
Oh,
So the thing
But-
again, the important thing is, and this is true for your yard, you know, you want to get rid of invasives, great. But what the end game for conservation purposes is to have native plants.
I see.
So if you remove all the invasives in your yard, but your yard is full of non-native plants, that doesn't really provide the food source that the critters need to survive. So removing the invasive is the first half of the game. The second half is to have the native plants, because it turns out our critters, by and large, don't get their food from the non-native plants. So
Yeah.
there is one of the problems. If you have no more native shrubs with berries and shrubs that have the worms for the baby birds, which are on natives, not non-natives, if you don't have enough of that food source, then you lose your wildlife.
I see. Wow.
So that's really the biggest, you know, conservation issue I see,
I see.
you know, with this whole invasive thing. So it's a complicated project. It's in the town master plan to do something about it. The town is also spending money on a consultant study, another consultant study to take a look at our road trees and give
What
the
do you
town
mean
some
road
advice.
Trees along the roads?
Yeah. So we're calling it scenic roads, and I know we have to be quick here, but
Yeah.
the idea is to have an expert, which we've hired, to survey trees along 26 miles of town roads and to identify the threats to those long-term tree health, and one of the threats being the invasives, and to give us a recommendation on how to best manage the tree canopy lining a lot of our streets.
Right.
And this is, again, a long-range, you know,
Nice.
kind of project. So I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, is there anything you really want to talk
Yeah.
about in the next minute?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out. So I'm trained as an engineer. I've been learning the ecology stuff for the last 20 years on my professional career and now with the town. So I feel like there's a lot I don't know. And I just want to promote something that Google Homegrown National Park, and you will come up with a lovely website that tells you which plants are native to our region and which ones have the highest ecological value,
Oh,
and presents the scientific reason why we should all be concerned about native plants. So rather than give you a website, just Google. I tried it last night. It works great. Homegrown National Park.
beautiful.
And there is also a lovely series of books done by one of those partners, a university professor called Doug Tallamy. And a lot of people in town that are environmentally minded are a student of Doug Tallamy, because he's done a lot of the early research that identified the fact that we'd be doing ourselves a favor if we replanted our yards as much as we have time with native plants, hence Homegrown National Park.
Wonderful.
And they've actually done the math that if everybody put a few more shrubs in their backyard, we solve some of these
Wonderful.
problems. So it's a fairly, talk about volunteer work. I mean, there's something you can do in your own yard, or promote this idea. Learn about it and promote it with your neighbors.
Thank you
So
very
I wanted
much,
to close
Peter.
on that.
Yeah, and thank you very much for being on the Chelmsford News Show
Thank you.
again. This is the second time, and maybe we'll do a third show too. If Peter says we should talk about some more things, I'd love to do another show with him. And thank you all for watching the show. Thank you to Pete Padula and the directors at the cable TV studio for all of your help with this show and all the shows. I'm Tom Christiano. Ciao.
And Peter Spahn, thank you very much. And I wanted to once again give a shout out to all the town staff and all of the volunteers that work on things related to the environment. There is a tremendous amount of energy and good stuff going on.
Yes.
And I appreciate what everybody is doing. It's good for our community.
Yes, thank you all. Thanks for watching the show. Ciao.
See, that's a problem.